Emma Chen stood in the grand ballroom, arranging white roses with trembling fingers, when the bride's voice cut through the elegant space like a blade. "Make sure that girl knows her place," Victoria Ashford declared, her crystal voice dripping with disdain. "I don't want the help getting too comfortable around my family." What Victoria didn't realize was that the quiet man observing from the corner, the one she'd been trying to impress all evening, was about to make a choice that would shatter her perfect world. Emma had been working as an event coordinator for prestige occasions for 2 years, ever since graduating from community college with a degree in hospitality management. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. She loved the work, transforming empty venues into magical spaces where people celebrated their most important moments. The pay wasn't much, but it covered her small apartment rent and helped her send money home to her mother in Sacramento. This particular Saturday morning found her at the Grandview Estate, a sprawling mansion in the hills overlooking the city, preparing for what her boss had called the wedding of the century. Victoria Ashford, daughter of tech mogul Richard Ashford, was marrying Trevor Morrison, heir to a hotel empire. The guest list read like a who's who of Silicon Valley elite, and everything had to be absolutely perfect. Emma arrived at 6 in the morning, her beat-up Honda Civic looking painfully out of place among the luxury cars already parked in the circular driveway. She wore her standard work uniform, black slacks, white blouse, and comfortable flats that would carry her through the 14-hour day ahead. Her long black hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she carried a clipboard thick with vendor schedules and setup instructions. The Grandview Estate was breathtaking. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the valley below. The ballroom alone could hold 300 guests, with its soaring ceilings and elegant columns. Emma had worked plenty of high-end events, but nothing quite like this. She spent the morning coordinating with the florists, ensuring that the thousands of white roses and peonies were arranged exactly as Victoria had specified. The bride had very particular ideas about everything, from the exact shade of ivory for the table linens to the precise angle of each centerpiece. Emma took careful notes, double-checking every detail. Around 10 o'clock, Victoria herself swept into the ballroom for her final walkthrough. She was undeniably beautiful, with platinum blonde hair styled in an elaborate updo and wearing a designer tracksuit that probably cost more than Emma's monthly salary. Her entourage followed close behind. Her mother, Mrs. Patricia Ashford, equally blonde and impeccably dressed. Her maid of honor, Chelsea, and 2 other bridesmaids whose names Emma hadn't caught. Victoria moved through the space like she owned it, which technically Emma supposed she did for the day. Her voice carried across the ballroom as she pointed out minor adjustments she wanted made. The centerpieces needed to be rotated slightly. The gift table should be moved 2 feet to the left. The champagne flutes weren't catching the light properly and needed to be repositioned. Emma followed behind, making notes and speaking quietly into her radio to coordinate with the various vendors. She'd learned to stay invisible during these final walkthroughs. Wealthy clients often preferred to pretend the help didn't exist unless directly addressed. "And who is this?" Victoria's voice suddenly focused on Emma, though she was speaking to Mrs. Ashford rather than addressing Emma directly. "That's the event coordinator. Emma something. She's been here since dawn getting everything ready." Victoria looked Emma up and down with the kind of cold assessment usually reserved for livestock. "She's rather young, isn't she? I hope she's experienced enough to handle something this important." Emma felt her cheeks warm, but kept her expression professional. "I've been coordinating events for prestige occasions for 2 years, Miss Ashford. We've handled several weddings of this scale, and I can assure you everything will run smoothly today." Victoria's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose slightly. "Miss Ashford, it's Mrs. Morrison now, or it will be in a few hours." She turned back to her mother. "I suppose she'll do. Just make sure she stays in the background. I don't want the staff being too visible during the ceremony." Emma nodded professionally, though something in Victoria's tone made her stomach tighten. She'd worked with demanding clients before, but there was something particularly cutting about the way Victoria spoke about the help and staying in the background. The morning continued with a steady stream of vendors arriving for setup. The caterers brought in their equipment and began preparing the kitchen. The musicians arrived to sound-check their instruments. The photographer started capturing behind-the-scenes moments, though Emma noticed she carefully stayed out of frame whenever the camera appeared. Around 12 o'clock, the wedding party arrived for photos. Victoria had changed into a silk robe embroidered with Mrs. Morrison in gold script. Her bridesmaids wore matching robes in blush pink, and they gathered in the estate's sunroom for getting-ready photos. Emma was in the kitchen checking on the catering setup when she heard Victoria's voice rising from the sunroom. "Excuse me, you there, the Asian girl." Emma looked up to find Victoria standing in the kitchen doorway, her silk robe billowing dramatically. "I need someone to fix my bustle. Chelsea was supposed to do it, but she's completely useless with the buttons." Emma glanced around, but the other staff members were busy with their own tasks. "Of course, I can help with that." She followed Victoria back to the sunroom, where the wedding dress hung on an ornate dressing screen. It was stunning, a custom Vera Wang creation, with intricate beadwork and a cathedral train. Emma had seen plenty of expensive wedding dresses, but this one probably cost more than she made in a year. "Be careful," Victoria instructed as Emma began working on the intricate bustling system. She'd helped with enough bridal preparations to know what she was doing, but Victoria's nervous energy made the task more stressful than it needed to be. "Be sure you know what you're doing?" Victoria asked, watching Emma's reflection in the full-length mirror. "Maybe I should call the bridal shop instead." "I've helped with bustles before," Emma assured her, securing the final button. "There, that should hold perfectly for the ceremony and reception." Victoria examined herself in the mirror, turning to check the drape of the train. "I suppose it will do. Though next time, maybe announce yourself when you enter a room. I was startled to see you just standing there." Emma bit back her response. She'd been called over specifically to help, but pointing that out seemed unwise. Instead, she simply nodded and stepped back. "Will there be anything else, Mrs. Morrison?" She was already turning away, dismissing her with a wave. "No, just remember to stay out of the way during the ceremony. The photographer doesn't need any distractions in the background." Emma returned to her coordination duties, checking that the ceremony chairs were properly aligned and that the altar decorations were secure. The afternoon flew by in a blur of last-minute adjustments and vendor management. By 4 o'clock, the guests were beginning to arrive, and Emma positioned herself in the back of the ballroom with her radio and clipboard. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Victoria looked stunning as she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, and Trevor seemed genuinely moved when he saw her. The vows were traditional but heartfelt, and even Emma found herself getting a little teary-eyed during the ring exchange. But it was during the cocktail hour that things began to shift. Emma was in the corner of the ballroom, quietly coordinating with the catering staff about the timing for dinner service, when she noticed a man she hadn't seen before. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and an understated elegance that seemed effortless. Unlike the other male guests in their flashy designer suits, he wore a simple but perfectly tailored navy blazer with dark jeans. What caught Emma's attention wasn't his appearance, but the way he moved through the crowd. While other guests seemed to perform their conversations, projecting their voices and gesturing dramatically, he listened more than he spoke, suggesting that his quiet presence commanded respect. Emma watched him briefly before returning to her checklist. The appetizers needed to be refreshed, and she wanted to confirm the timeline for the first dance. She was speaking quietly into her radio when she felt someone approach her. "Excuse me," a warm voice said beside her. Emma turned to find the quiet man standing nearby, holding 2 glasses of champagne. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a warm brown and that he had the kind of smile that reached all the way to the corners of his eyes. He continued, "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to thank you for everything you've done today. The setup is absolutely beautiful, and I can tell how much work went into making this perfect." Emma blinked in surprise. In 2 years of coordinating events, she could count on one hand the number of times a guest had thanked her directly.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. I'm just doing my job. Well, you're doing it exceptionally well. He extended one of the champagne glasses toward her. I thought you might be thirsty. You've been working non-stop all day. Emma looked at the glass, then back at him. That's very thoughtful, but I'm working. I don't think I should— One sip won't hurt, he said gently. Besides, I insist. I'm Marcus, by the way. Something in his tone made her accept the glass. Emma, and thank you. This is very kind. They stood together for a moment, and Emma found herself relaxing slightly for the first time all day. Marcus asked about her work, seeming genuinely interested in the logistics of event planning. He had an easy way of talking that made her forget about the formal atmosphere of the wedding. Emma! Victoria's voice cut across the space like a whip crack. What are you doing? Emma's heart sunk as she saw Victoria approaching, her wedding dress rustling with each determined step. The bride's face was flushed with anger, and several guests had turned to watch the commotion. I asked you to stay in the background, Victoria continued, her voice carrying across the ballroom. This is my wedding, not a networking opportunity for the help. Emma felt her face burn with embarrassment. Around them, conversations had stopped, and guests were openly staring at the confrontation. She quickly set down her champagne glass, wishing she could disappear into the floor. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison. I was just coordinating with the catering staff and chatting with my guests like you belong here, which you don't. You're here to work, not to socialize. Marcus stepped forward slightly, his expression shifting from friendly to something more serious. Actually, I was the one who— Victoria turned to him with a dazzling smile, her entire demeanor changing instantly. Oh, I'm so sorry you had to witness that. Staff can be so presumptuous sometimes. I hope she wasn't bothering you. Not at all, Marcus replied, his voice carefully neutral. We were just— I should have been clearer about boundaries. Sometimes people forget their place when they're around wealth they'll never have. She laughed, a sound like crystal chimes that somehow managed to be cruel. It's almost sad, really. Emma wanted to defend herself, to explain that she hadn't been bothering anyone, but the words stuck in her throat. Around them, the crowd of onlookers was growing, and she could feel their eyes on her like physical weights. Victoria turned back to Emma, her smile sharp as glass. I think it would be best if you focused on your actual duties. The kitchen staff needs supervision, and I'm sure there are bathrooms that need checking. You know, appropriate work for your skill level. The dismissal was clear and brutal. Emma nodded stiffly, her professional training keeping her voice steady even as her hands shook. Of course, Mrs. Morrison. I'll return to my duties immediately. She turned to leave, but Victoria wasn't finished. And Emma, in the future, I'd suggest remembering that there's a difference between the people who belong at events like this and the people who are paid to serve them. Boundaries are important. Emma walked away as quickly as she could without running, her face burning with humiliation. Behind her, she could hear Victoria's bright laughter and someone murmuring agreement about staff overstepping. She found refuge in the kitchen, where the catering team was too busy with dinner preparations to notice her shaky composure. For the next hour, Emma threw herself into work, checking every detail twice and staying as far from the main party as possible. She coordinated the transition from cocktails to dinner, ensured that the head table was properly set, and confirmed the timing for speeches and dancing. But even as she worked, Victoria's words echoed in her mind. People who belong, and people who are paid to serve them. The casual cruelty of it, delivered with a perfect smile in front of a crowd of witnesses, made Emma's stomach twist with a familiar shame she thought she'd outgrown. She was checking the dessert display when she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she expected to see one of the catering staff, but instead found Marcus approaching with 2 plates of food. I thought you might be hungry, he said quietly, offering her one of the plates. You've been working through dinner. Emma glanced around nervously. The last thing she needed was another confrontation with Victoria. "That's very kind, but I really can't. After what happened earlier—" "What happened earlier was wrong," Marcus said firmly. "You were doing nothing but your job, and doing it well. No one deserves to be spoken to that way." His kindness almost broke her composure entirely. Emma blinked back tears she couldn't afford to shed. Not here, not now. "It's fine, really. I'm used to difficult clients." "That doesn't make it right." Marcus set both plates on a nearby table and looked at her seriously. "I want you to know that not everyone here thinks that way. What she said about boundaries and who belongs where, that's not how decent people think." Emma managed a weak smile. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know." They were interrupted by the sound of clapping from the ballroom. The speeches were about to begin, which meant Emma needed to coordinate with the AV team to ensure that the microphones were working properly. "I should go," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Duty calls." Marcus nodded, but his expression was troubled. "Emma, don't let her make you feel small. You're worth more than her opinion." As Emma walked back toward the ballroom, she carried those words with her like a shield. The evening continued with speeches, first dances, and cake cutting. Emma coordinated each transition smoothly, staying invisible as requested, but Victoria's earlier humiliation had cast a shadow over everything. During the father-daughter dance, Emma noticed Marcus again. He was standing at the edge of the dance floor, but unlike the other guests who were watching the dancers, his attention seemed focused on the crowd itself. He had the observant quality of someone who noticed things others missed, and Emma wondered what he did for a living. The reception continued late into the evening. Emma coordinated the bouquet toss, supervised the cleanup of dinner tables, and ensured that the late-night snack service was properly arranged. She was exhausted, running on adrenaline and determination to prove that she could handle anything Victoria threw at her. It was nearly midnight when the final incident occurred. Emma was in the kitchen, coordinating with the catering crew about which items needed to be returned to vendors the next day. When Victoria appeared in the doorway, the bride had changed from her wedding dress to a sleek white cocktail dress for the after-party, and she'd clearly had several glasses of champagne. Her cheeks were flushed, and her earlier polished composure had given way to something more raw and cruel.
"There you are," Victoria said, her voice slightly slurred. "I've been looking for you." Emma tensed. In her experience, nothing good ever came from a drunk bride seeking out the event coordinator at midnight. "Is there something you need, Mrs. Morrison?" Victoria stepped into the kitchen, and Emma noticed that several of her friends had followed her, including Chelsea and two other women Emma didn't recognize. They formed a semicircle around the kitchen entrance, effectively blocking Emma's exit. "I wanted to have a little chat," Victoria continued, her voice taking on a falsely sweet tone, "about professionalism and knowing your place." Emma's heart began to race. The kitchen staff had finished their immediate tasks and stepped outside for a break, leaving her alone with Victoria and her entourage. "I thought I made myself clear earlier," Victoria said, moving closer. "But then I saw you talking to Marcus again during dinner service. Apparently, you didn't get the message." Emma's mouth went dry. She had spoken to Marcus briefly when he'd asked about the timing for the cake cutting, but it had been purely professional. "I was just answering his question about the evening schedule. That's part of my job." "Your job," Victoria repeated, laughing. "Let me explain your job to you, since you seem confused." She gestured around the kitchen. "Your job is to stay back here, with the dishes and the trash, where you belong. Your job is not to chat with my wedding guests like your equals." Chelsea giggled, a sound that made Emma's skin crawl. "Seriously, it's so embarrassing when the help doesn't know their place." "I mean, look at her," added one of the other women, whose name Emma thought might be Brittany. "That sad little outfit, probably from Target. Does she really think someone like Marcus would be interested in her?" Victoria's eyes lit up with malicious delight. "Oh, that's what this is about. Poor little Emma has a crush on one of the guests." She turned to her friends with exaggerated sympathy.
Isn't that precious? She actually thinks she has a chance." Emma felt her face burning with humiliation, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm just here to do my job, Mrs. Morrison. If you'll excuse me, I need to check on the cleanup schedule." She tried to move toward the door, but Victoria stepped sideways, blocking her path. "I don't think we're finished talking yet." The situation was escalating beyond anything Emma had experienced before. She looked around the kitchen, calculating her options, but Victoria's friends had positioned themselves to cut off any escape routes. "Here's the thing," Victoria continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more threatening than shouting. "Marcus is family now. My husband's family. And I won't have some little nobody making our family uncomfortable with her pathetic attempts at social climbing." Emma's professional composure finally cracked. "I'm not trying to climb anything. I'm trying to do my job, which you've made incredibly difficult with your behavior tonight." The words were out before she could stop them, and Emma knew she'd made a mistake. Victoria's face went white with fury, and the pretense of civilized conversation evaporated entirely. "My behavior?" Victoria's voice rose to a near shriek. "You're criticizing my behavior at my own wedding?" The kitchen suddenly felt very small and very dangerous. Emma realized that she was in real trouble, alone with 4 drunk women who seemed determined to make her suffer for some imagined slight. "I think," Victoria said, her voice returning to that dangerous whisper, "that you need to learn a lesson about respect and boundaries. And I think my friends and I are just the people to teach it to you." As Victoria stepped closer, Emma backed against the kitchen counter, her heart pounding. She looked desperately toward the door, hoping someone would come in and interrupt this nightmare, but the kitchen remained empty except for the 5 of them. What happened next would change everything. Emma thought she knew about power, family, and the dangerous assumptions people make about each other. But she didn't know that yet. All she knew was that she was trapped in a kitchen with 4 women who seemed determined to humiliate her, and there was no one coming to help her. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked toward 12:30 a.m., and Emma Chen was about to learn that sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who never feel the need to prove it. Emma pressed herself against the cold kitchen counter as Victoria stepped closer, her white cocktail dress seeming to glow under the harsh fluorescent lights. The bride's friends formed a tighter circle, their designer heels clicking ominously on the tile floor. "You know what I think?" Victoria said, her champagne-sweetened breath hot against Emma's face. "I think you need to understand exactly where you stand in the world. Maybe a little reality check will help you remember your place." Chelsea pulled out her phone with a cruel smile. "This is going to be so good for social media. Everyone needs to see what happens when the help gets too comfortable." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd handled difficult clients before, but nothing like this. The kitchen felt like a trap, with no escape route that would require pushing past Victoria's intimidating entourage. "Please," Emma said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady, "I just want to finish my work and go home. I haven't done anything wrong." "Haven't done anything wrong?" Victoria laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "You're flirting with my family all night, acting like you belong in our world. That's theft, honey, stealing attention that isn't yours to take." Before Emma could respond, the kitchen door swung open. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. Behind him was standing an older man Emma recognized as Richard Ashford, Victoria's father, along with Trevor, the groom. "What's going on here?" Marcus asked, his voice carrying an authority that made everyone freeze. Victoria's demeanor shifted instantly, her cruel mask sliding back behind a dazzling smile. "Marcus, we were just having a little chat with the event coordinator about professionalism." It looked like something else entirely. Marcus stepped into the kitchen, his eyes finding Emma's, and he saw anger flickering in their depths. "Are you all right?" Emma nodded quickly, not trusting her voice. Victoria's friends began shuffling nervously, apparently sensing that the dynamic had changed with the arrival of the men. Richard Ashford looked between his daughter and Emma with growing confusion. "Victoria, what exactly is happening here? Why are you cornering the staff?" "It's nothing, Daddy," Victoria said, her voice taking on a childish whine. She was just being inappropriate with the guests, and I was explaining proper boundaries. Inappropriate how? Trevor asked, frowning at his new wife. Victoria gestured it dismissively at Emma, chatting up Marcus like she had any right to his attention, acting like she belonged at our wedding instead of staying in the background where she's supposed to be. Marcus stepped forward, his jaw tight. I was the one who initiated those conversations. Emma was nothing but professional and courteous. Of course you'd defend her, Victoria snapped, some of her earlier venom creeping back into her voice. Men never notice when women like her are throwing themselves at them. It's pathetic, really. The temperature in the kitchen seemed to drop several degrees. Richard Ashford's face had gone pale, and Trevor was staring at his wife with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. Women like her? Marcus repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. Victoria seemed oblivious to the warning signs. You know what I mean? Working class, desperate for a way up. They see wealthy men and think they can charm their way into a better life. It's embarrassing to watch. Emma felt tears threatening again, but before she could respond, Marcus spoke. Victoria, he said, his voice carrying a weight that made everyone in the room go still. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Something in his tone made Victoria's confident smile falter slightly. What do you mean? Marcus looked directly at her, his expression completely serious. I'm not just some family friend, and I'm not someone you want to make an enemy of. My name is Marcus Ashford. I'm your father-in-law's brother, which makes me your husband's uncle. More importantly, I own the hotel chain that just signed the contract to host your father's company retreats for the next 5 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's face went from confident to confused to horrified in the span of seconds. Emma saw the exact moment when the implications hit her. You're lying, Victoria whispered, but her voice had lost all its certainty. Richard Ashford stepped forward, his face grim. He's not lying, Victoria. Marcus is Trevor's uncle and one of the most successful hospitality executives on the West Coast. He's also the man whose recommendation got you the venue discount for this wedding. Trevor was staring at his wife with growing horror. Victoria, what have you done? Marcus continued, his voice never rising above conversational level, which somehow made his words more devastating. I've spent this entire evening watching you humiliate a young woman who's done nothing but work tirelessly to make your day perfect. I've seen you mock her appearance, her background, and her worth as a human being. And now I've watched you attempt to intimidate her in a kitchen with your friends filming for entertainment. Victoria's phone-wielding friends had gone silent, their devices lowered as they realized they were witnessing something far more serious than they'd bargained for. I've also been watching Emma, Marcus continued, turning slightly toward her. I've seen her handle every crisis with grace, treat every vendor with respect, and maintain her professionalism even when you made it clear you considered her beneath your notice. I've watched her work harder than anyone else here to ensure your day was perfect, and I've seen her respond to your cruelty with dignity. Emma stared at him, hardly believing what she was hearing. The quiet man who'd brought her champagne and asked about her work was Trevor's uncle, a successful businessman who could have revealed his identity at any time but chose not to. The question now, Marcus said, looking back at Victoria, is what we do about this situation. Victoria's face had gone white. Marcus, I didn't know. If I had realized who you were, if you had realized who I was, you would have treated me with respect while continuing to abuse Emma, Marcus said flatly. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Richard Ashford looked mortified. Marcus, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable behavior. The apology isn't owed to me, Marcus replied. It's owed to Emma, who's been treated like garbage at what should have been a celebration of love and commitment. All eyes turned to Victoria, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Her earlier confidence had evaporated completely, replaced by the dawning realization of how badly she'd miscalculated. I'm sorry, she said to Emma, but the words sounded hollow and forced. Emma looked at the woman who'd spent the evening making her feel small and worthless. Part of her wanted to accept the apology and move on, but another part recognized that this wasn't really about her anymore. This was about the kind of person Victoria had revealed herself to be. I accept your apology, Emma said quietly. "But I don't think you're sorry for what you did. I think you're sorry you got caught." Victoria's mouth fell open, apparently shocked that the woman she'd been bullying all evening would dare to call her out. Marcus nodded approvingly. "Emma's right. You're not sorry for treating her badly. You're sorry that it turned out to be inconvenient for you." Trevor stepped forward, looking stricken. "Emma, I am truly sorry for my wife's behavior. This isn't who I thought I was marrying." The weight of those words hung in the air. Emma could see the moment when Trevor really looked at his new wife, perhaps for the first time seeing past the beauty and social connections to the person underneath. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "that Emma deserves more than apologies. She deserves recognition for her professionalism and her character." He turned to Emma with a smile that was both kind and respectful. "I've meant what I said earlier about your work being exceptional. I've been to hundreds of events, and I've rarely seen anyone handle logistics and crisis management with your skill level." Emma felt her cheeks warm, but this time with pride rather than shame. "Thank you. That means a lot from someone with your experience. I'd like to offer you a position. My hotel chain is always looking for talented event coordinators, and I think you'd be perfect for managing our corporate events and wedding packages. The salary would be substantially higher than what you're making now, plus full benefits and opportunities for advancement." Emma stared at him, hardly believing what she was hearing. A job offer from a major hotel chain was beyond anything she dreamed possible. I would love that opportunity," she managed. Victoria made a small sound of protest, but Marcus silenced her with a look. "Some people," he said, his gaze sweeping over Victoria and her friends, "seem to think that worth is determined by designer clothes and family connections. But real worth is about character, integrity, and how you treat others when you think no one important is watching." He looked back at Emma with genuine warmth. "You've shown more class in one evening than some people manage in a lifetime." As the group began to disperse, Emma felt a profound shift in her understanding of the world. She'd entered the evening as an invisible service worker, someone whose worth was measured only by her ability to stay out of the way. She was leaving as a valued professional with a promising new opportunity. Victoria and her friends slipped away without another word, their earlier triumph turned to shame. Trevor lingered, apologizing once more, before following his wife into what Emma suspected would be a very difficult conversation about the kind of marriage they were starting. Marcus walked Emma to her car, carrying her coordination supplies and ensuring she got safely to the parking garage. He said as she unlocked her Honda, "I meant what I said about the job offer. But even if you decide not to take it, I want you to remember tonight. Remember that your worth isn't determined by other people's opinions or prejudices." Emma nodded, feeling tears of gratitude rather than humiliation for the first time all evening. "Thank you for standing up for me. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Marcus said simply, "because that's what decent people do for each other." As Emma drove home through the quiet city streets, she reflected on the evening's events. She'd learned that appearances could be deceiving in ways she'd never imagined. The quiet man in simple clothes had turned out to be more powerful than the flashy guests in designer suits. The beautiful bride in her $40,000 dress had revealed herself to be smaller and meaner than anyone in work clothes could ever be. Most importantly, she'd learned that her own worth wasn't negotiable. It didn't depend on Victoria's approval or anyone else's opinion. It was inherent, unshakable, and finally recognized by someone who mattered. The interview with Marcus's company was scheduled for the following Tuesday. By the end of the month, Emmett Chen would be managing events at 5-star hotels, earning twice her previous salary, and building a career that would eventually take her around the world. But none of that was as important as the lesson she'd learned in a kitchen at midnight, that true power isn't about putting others down, it's about lifting them up. And sometimes the people with the most power are the ones who never feel the need to prove it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.